Okay, and for the next talk is Shen Coughlan. He is maybe some of you don't know him, but I know him for several years. And Shen, he engaged himself already for several years in free and open source software legal issues. So he has a very extensive knowledge and a rich experience in this field. And from the last year, he has become the regional director of OIN in Asia, and now he is a resident in Japan. So he flies from Japan to Taiwan this time. And in the following 30 minutes, he will talk about about patent issues and OIM, these very unique organizations. And so now let's welcome Shen.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for the very kind introduction, Florence. It's a pleasure to be here in Taipei again, and it's wonderful to be part of, I think, the first COSCUP legal track. So we've got a great lineup today. There's the brilliant team from Academia Sinica. We've got Harold Velte. We've got Soren from Asus Tech. And you've got me, which isn't great, but you'll have to make do. I'm going to cover patents today. It's quite an important subject, and we're going to cover it in a maybe a non-emotional, very practical way. I'll explain why. As Florence said, I'm Regional Director Asia of Open Invention Network. That means that I try to deal with patent issues around free and open source software. More specifically, I try to deal with patent issues around the Linux system. I try to help people innovate freely and make sure that patent concerns do not prevent the innovation we need to grow this market. You cannot talk about free software and legal issues without talking about patents. Well, actually, you can't talk about free software legal issues without talking about copyright, trademarks, and patents. But today we're going to talk about patents because it's an area of importance and an area of confusion. What we're going to do is we're going to contextualize the patent conversation by thinking about how free software works in the global economy and how patents influence or affect free software in this context. We're not going to talk about ethics. We're not going to talk about opinion. We're going to talk about effects that can be measured and dealt with. This allows everyone to understand the issues, no matter who they are or what their personal interest. This talk is based on two questions. What is the market reality today, and how do we address it? Companies have, for a very long time, practically always, used codified and non-codified intellectual capital to drive growth. Codified capital means basically formal ways of dealing with innovation. Patents are an example. Copyright is another example. It's a formal way of dealing with it under law. Then you have non-codified or informal ways of dealing with innovation. That's stuff like knowledge we share in conversation, know-how and experience that one person can transfer to another. Codified intellectual capital is more or less regulated by law. Non-codified intellectual capital is very much a social issue. Our focus is on codified. We're dealing with law today. Now, intellectual capital, codified, has traditionally been closed. In other words, it has been based around the concept of restricting rights to drive value. This is connected with the idea of supply and demand. If there is a relatively limited supply and a lot of demand, value rises. It's a very simple concept. It's behind most economics. And traditionally, our approach to intellectual capital has been about restricting and raising value. That's a closed approach to intellectual capital. The tradition is not set in stone. Occasionally, we challenge traditions. New ways of doing business emerge. With free software, we're looking at a new way of dealing with intellectual capital. We're looking at a new approach to drive value. Free software depends on collaboration. It depends on an open way of doing business. Instead of restricting intellectual capital to drive value, you open it and you collaborate to drive value. That is a relatively new approach to the current global market, especially in the technology industry. What we have today as a market reality is a global market that has both open and closed ways of doing business, open and closed ways of dealing with intellectual capital, open and closed ways of creating value. It's not today open or closed. It isn't black and white. It isn't one or the other. If we are talking about dealing with market realities, we're talking about dealing with a complex situation where some people are getting value from closed approaches to intellectual capital, and some people are getting value from open approaches. What we have to do is deal with that. We have to address the reality and find a way to balance the market so that people who want to do business, let's say with the newer open approach, are very much free to do so. That they can compete openly and directly with other approaches, such as more traditional methods of dealing with intellectual capital. It's about having a fair and accessible market for everyone. Free software, and this is a very important point, free software is perhaps the most important approach to innovation we've seen in the post-industrial era. This approach to using intellectual capital has only been around for about 25 years, and yet it is changing the way that we do business around the world. It has moved beyond software. It has moved into other areas, even hardware. Recently, I was talking with a hydrogen car company releasing their technology under free software licenses. It is changing how we do business absolutely everywhere. It's a game changer, a very disruptive approach to innovation, and that's a good thing. Oops. According to IDC, Linux alone, the Linux economy, more specifically the Linux server business, is going to be worth approximately $49 billion globally by 2011. A very significant sum of money for something that just 10 years ago was a very, very small economic aspect of the server business. That's over 35% yearly growth rate, which is incredible. We think that, for instance, the Chinese economy growing at 9% a year is astonishing. 35% is unprecedented, and it's been continuous since 2006. It's snowballing. It's going global. It's increasing in speed. It's basically taking over everything. In the largest economic zone in the world, the European Union, people think it's the United States. It's not. Not anymore, kids. In the European Union, free software is expected to account for approximately 32% of all IT, either directly or indirectly, by the end of this year, according to research by the United Nations University. It's expected to account for up to 4% of the European gross domestic product by the end of this year. Incredibly significant economic figures. incredibly important market data, saying that we cannot ignore the sheer value that's being created through open ways of doing business, through open collaboration and innovation. Basically, free software is empirically, explicitly, provably very, very valuable to a lot of people, a lot of organizations. There's simply no question about that and no doubt. That's why we need to think very carefully about how we protect and grow free software in the future. Now, patents are a fascinating topic. Patents, as a codified intellectual capital, can be used either to help or restrict the free software economy and Linux, depending on how they're used. It really depends on what happens, what the motives of patent holders are, what the methods of their business operations are. What we can say is that patents, coming from what was traditionally a closed approach to innovation, patents are not inherently going to mean things are closed, but they can be utilized to restrict. At the same time, patents with a free license grant can be used to enable people. It all depends on how they are applied. Now, most people, most businesses today really do understand that free software has got great potential and great value, and they are embracing this ecosystem, working with it to create even more value as it enters new markets, whether it's mobile, whether it's embedded, whatever. However, there are some parties who have a different perspective regarding things like innovation, regarding things like Linux. We do see today an increase in the number of patent speculation or troll-like business models, and they can present a challenge. They can present a challenge to the Linux system, they can present a challenge to free software, and of course they present a challenge more broadly to all of the technology industry, including the closed aspects of the industry. In free software, in the Linux system, we are dealing with the challenge. Defensive organizations like Open Invention Network have appeared to deal with the market reality in a way that will lead to the least possible disruption and the maximum possible growth and benefit for everyone. In other words, we are working out ways to address these concerns today. I have a very interesting management style triangle flowcharty thing here, which explains that Open Invention Network enables, influences, and defends the Linux system and the broader free software ecosystem. Or at least it looks nice. What I'm going to do is explain precisely what we do in reality to help make things work. First and foremost, we advocate why open collaboration, open innovation, partnership is a really good idea, why it drives value, why we know that, how we can all support it. That's a very important message. Existing stakeholders usually get it, though we might be able to help increase their participation by providing additional perspective. New stakeholders or potential new stakeholders might be starting from scratch, and we might have a long conversation about how collaborative innovation can provide great benefit. Open Invention Network does this from the perspective of patents, intellectual capital in that area, and we try to help people get the information they need to make an informed, good choice. We build a community of licensees that explicitly agree to share innovation around the Linux system without restriction. This is about people taking a step and saying that they see the value in the Linux system and they are explicitly promising to support it. We do things like facilitate defensive publications to record inventions in new ways. Now, I'd like to pause for just one brief second around defensive publications. Does anyone here in this room know what a defensive publication is? Harold Velte, of course. Yes, and Soren. So the lawyer and the crazy GPL guy know. Everyone else is silent. A defensive publication is something that records an invention. It doesn't cost any money, but it means that the invention is recorded so that no one else can pretend it's their invention. No one else can patent it. A defensive publication is a really important way of recording innovation so that people know it's there. I bring it up because a lot of people have an impression that patents are there, and then you can just do things like release source code and your inventions are public. It's not quite that simple. I remember reading an article that the average US Patent Office examiner has got 5 minutes per application to do a quick search. So if you don't actually have a defensive publication recorded in the type of place that they look, they mightn't know you invented something. They might grant a patent to someone else around the invention. And then there's the expensive business of proving that the patent had existing prior art. So yes, OIN does things like facilitates defensive publications to help people who don't want to make a patent or strategically at this time do not want to issue a patent record an innovation defensively. We work with the community to neutralize threats. And by that, I don't necessarily mean dramatic confrontations. I mean that we are out there speaking with community organizations like Linux Foundation, like Software Freedom Law Center, basically everyone, trying to understand what the current challenges, concerns, fears are in the community around patents so that we can come up with strategies and we can invest in finding solutions to keep the Linux system growing, to keep people confident and secure. And of course, on the slightly more dramatic side, we discourage or deter parties which might be aggressive towards the Linux system, speculators, trolls, whatever. We try to make sure that the Linux system is as safe as possible from challenges. And when challenges arise, we try to address those. We get engaged. All of this, whether it's telling people about Linux, free software, and open innovation, whether it's recording innovations through defensive publications, speaking with community organizations, having a group, a community of people who pledge non-aggression, or deterring aggressive parties, all of this is about creating a patent aggression no-fly zone over the Linux system. It's about creating a situation where people see the value, understand the value, and we can maintain it. So it's really, if you pull back and look at the larger free software economy that's growing 35% a year, things like what Open Invention Network are doing are part of a larger approach to innovation, a sort of new approach to innovation based on the concepts behind free software. It's about thinking, how do we formally organize collaborative, global innovation around things like technology? How do we make that work? How do we ensure that investors see value, developers comprehend rules, businesses can do transactions no matter what country, what culture? It's an important conversation. And things around the Linux system, where we're at the absolute cutting edge of this economy, this is where we're beginning to prove the methods, the processes that will help guide later growth throughout all of free software, and later throughout all of the economic and social areas inspired by free software. Getting practical again, pulling back, everyone can be part of this. Everyone can help with this, and everyone can get support through this. Basically, everyone doing stuff around the Linux system or free software can be part of the conversation, and I narrowed it down to 4 easy things you can do. First of all, pledging not to be aggressive, formally stating that you get it, and that on the Linux system, if you happen to have a Linux system patent, you do not plan to use it aggressively. That's an important step. It's explaining to yourself and to others that you get where the value of collaboration is coming from. Open Invention Network runs a community of licensees who make that pledge, completely free. The only thing that we ask is that people make the pledge of non-aggression. Very, very happy to welcome new people, whether it's a project or a business. We want more people to state that they get it, that they do not think patent aggression is necessary or a good thing around the Linux system, and that they're willing to stand up and be counted on that. You can do it for free at openinventionnetwork.com, or you can just grab my business card in a minute. You can get help if you're ever faced with aggression or threats around the Linux system. We've got a slightly silly name for it, Linux Defenders 911. I blame our marketing department. But it is real. I mean, if you go there to openinventionnetwork.com/linux911.php, basically it's a simple way to go and get help. If you have any concerns, if you're approached with patent threats or intimidation, contact OIN. We're there to support you. Anyone, anywhere can do it. Whether or not they're a licensee, whether or not they've pledged non-aggression, every stakeholder is welcome. We're here to help. You can support things like defensive publications to ensure that new innovations stay available. If you invent something cool, don't just forget about it. Go to places like defensivepublications.org, where Open Invention Network has created an explanation of how you can record it, and then we'll take the time with our lawyers and the cost of making sure it's recorded in the right places so that patent examiners can see your invention and make sure that patents are not granted on it. And you can explore interesting initiatives like peer-to-patent and post-peer-to-patent. A lot of people will not have heard of these. You can find out more on linuxdefenders.org. But basically, these are initiatives being run by New York Law School. They've got a thing called the Center for Patent Innovations and various patent offices around the world. In particular, the US Patent Office and the Japanese Patent Office. And I believe the UK Patent Office is going to start running a trial as well. This is about reform, about checking quality of applications and even quality of existing patents, trying to make sure that the current system is explored and examined and thinking about new ways of dealing with things like patents. Interestingly, questions about free software and legal issues are solved just as collaboratively as making code. What we have is an immense global community of people, businesses, governments, and non-profit organizations putting energy and time into a very interesting approach to innovation. From the perspective of patents, which can be charged, it can be a quite emotional or aggressive discussion when we speak about patents. From the perspective of patents, we can address today's challenges, all of them, in very practical ways. And whether we want, in the future, to maintain, say, software patents or to abolish them, whatever our perspectives as organizations and as companies, everyone can assist in dealing with today's challenges through the steps I've outlined. The resources are there, the expertise is there, and increasingly as time goes by, the proof that it works is there. So, what we would like to do at Open Invention Network is invite everyone to be part of the solution. We are very open to discussion. We're very happy to inform people about what we're doing, about what the challenges are, and where we can all go next. As I said, whether you're a project, whether you're a business, whether you're a charity, we want to speak with you. You're a stakeholder in an amazing approach to technology, and our sole mission, our sole purpose, is to help protect and grow this approach. To do that from the perspective of patents. My email is here. I'm here today and tomorrow, and the CEO of Open Invention Network will be here tomorrow. Please come up to us, please ask questions, and let us help if we can. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Shen. And because time is limited for just open for one question here.
Aha!
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Okay. Will you please kindly provide a case study that OIM defended speculators successfully or unsuccessfully? Thank you.
I will go for a success story. Well, I'll give an example of a large challenge. Open Invention Network has quite a lot of patents in a defensive pool, so that can deter companies. But people often ask, what about trolls? You can't deter a troll with patents. How do you address trolls? So I'd like to explain how we did that in one particular situation. There was a case in 2009 where Allied Security Trust bought some patent lots, some groups of patents from Microsoft, actually. And Open Invention Network became aware that one of these patent lots contained some patents that could be of concern to free software. We work quite a lot in the business area of patent transactions to build relationships, and we had a good relationship with AST. So we moved in and we agreed to buy that patent lot, to put it in our defensive pool, and to give everyone who pledges non-aggression a royalty-free, unconditional license to all of those patents. In that way, we took the patents out of the market before they could be used harmfully. So that's an example of how we try to step in and to deal with potential threats, potential challenges in a very practical sense. We had the relationships, we had the information, and we had the ability to take those patents out of the market and to make sure that absolutely everyone who says that they're not going to be aggressive around Linux can always have a royalty-free license for any purpose on those patents. You're very welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Shen, for your our introduction to the OIM and your sharing for your successful case. Yeah. Okay.